So, you ever tried to raise your own farm birds? Anybody who's tried to raise their own farm birds and been really, really disappointed in the results of the tenderness or the toughness of the meat? If you want to raise a self-sufficient breed that hatches its own eggs and raise the meat up from those eggs, and you get them from your common hatcheries that are really popular across the United States, you are going to be very disappointed in your meat product. Why is that? Well, the hatcheries are really good at specializing. So when you're doing your egg breeds, okay, they get chickens that really produce eggs. The dual purpose, a lot of those breeds are a feather breed. And you know what I mean by a feather breed? What I mean is they sell it according to how the feathers look. A lot of these chickens are feathered in a way it hides their conformation, and it hides their how much meat they've got on their frame, and they can look brilliant and beautiful when you give them all the grain that they want to eat and put them in a climate controlled environment. They look amazing, but you go to eat these supposedly dual purpose breeds, the eating experience is always very disappointing unless you get a designated meat breed, which is the hatcheries are selling the Cornish, and then there's some different, little more free-ranging, meatier breeds that they're selling, but they're all based on how fast can I grow this chicken. I have never bought chickens from the hatchery that had everything. I never bought a chicken from the hatchery that was a dual purpose, that raised their own chicks and was good eating, and had meat. So if you take the regular dual purpose chickens, the roosters, and you butcher them when they will be tender before that spur grows, they're so skinny it's disappointing. They just don't fill out. These roosters put on this big old frame, and then they don't fill out the meat on the frame until about 2 years old. But if you wait till they're 2 years old, their spurs are fully grown, they're fully mature, they're very meaty, but it's so tough, you just, unless you want like pressure cooked chicken, the eating experience is quite disappointing. So the way I got around it is I've been breeding. I had a mixture of chickens. I had some that laid pretty good and had a decent body on them, and I started selecting my own and selective breeding my own chickens. 6 years in, I went from skinny roosters, like before that, when they were tender, before that spur growth, they were always skinny. That chest bone, the breastbone on the rooster sticks out in a pointed V for a meat bird, and then the breast meat is just flat in there, and you get a thin little fillet of breast. I mean, it tastes really good, but for the amount of feed that they eat and the amount of meat that you get back, it's not worth it. So a lot of people, they're like, I'm just buying the meat birds. I don't blame them. But most of those meat birds aren't very self-sufficient. And when they get up to weight, you got to butcher them, otherwise they have health problems. So I started selectively breeding. What did I do? I have a cold environment up here in northern Wisconsin. So if a chicken, I stopped pampering them. If they froze their feet, got frostbite in a foot, butcher it. If the chicken gets that winter pneumonia, butcher it. And if the roosters frostbite their comb, butcher him, don't breed him. And in 6 years, I went from having a bunch of sick chickens every winter, and even when I insulated and heated the coop, I had sick chickens every winter. And every time I'd butcher old hens, there was a lot of hens with tumors and cancer. And in 6 years of just selecting the hardiest chickens that had the size and shape that I wanted in my flock of anywhere from 80 to 100 chickens, I learned a lot of things. You know, when you're raising chicks up, you don't butcher the biggest chicks that are ready first. Your nicest chicks that get up to a good size first, keep those roosters. Butcher your skinniest, scrawniest, smallest ones first. Otherwise, if you're going to breed those birds, what you're doing is you're selecting all the best chickens and eating them while you're waiting on the runts to grow, and then the runts are the only ones left, and that's what breeds your hens, and then it gets in a bad cycle. So just flipping my thinking on that made my chickens, they grow a thick, dense feather, which is harder to pluck. Wah, wah. You know, I'm not a production farmer, so it takes a little bit longer to pluck my chickens. I don't care, because they're surviving the winters. There's frostbite is very rare in comb and foot. These chickens, the last time I butchered, it was 2 years ago, I butchered 30 of my old hens, and I couldn't find one with a problem, so I started picking for size and conformation, because there was no frostbite and no sick chickens. So I just started weeding out colors and feathers, patterns I didn't like, and size and meatiness. And out of those 30 chickens, all but 2 were full of fat inside in winter, and not one tumor, not one sickness, not one cancer. And another benefit of those old hens is they were all juicy and tender, and I know some of those hens were 4 or 5 years old. So I just kept selecting and selecting, and I also learned, keep 6 or 7 or 8. If you got 100 chickens, you don't want any less than 6 roosters. And then if you have any kind of problems with health, you just butcher it. You don't doctor it, you butcher it. If it's a really sick animal anymore, I put it out of its misery and give it to the dogs. I don't eat the sick meat anymore. It's really tough and stringy, and why eat diseased meat? Not doing it. So just by that simple thing, that's a long haul though. So if you don't want to breed your own chickens, or buy from somebody small that's doing what I do, which I have never talked to another person yet that does what I do, raise and breed your own chickens. And when they do, they don't do what I do and select for meatiness and plumpness and hardiness and all of those things. It's a helter-skelter breeding, and they do what I used to do, which is I kept the prettiest looking rooster. I didn't feel his breastbone and see if it's straight. You know, you want to, their keel, sometimes you get a crooked keel. Now I select to get rid of that. I want good hardy birds that are alert. I also want beautiful animals. So if there's nothing wrong with them health-wise, and then I select for beauty. And it's been a great experience, and the breeding for me has halted for 2 years because of moving and some other life stuff, but I'm going to kick that right back up and raise me some nice looking birds. Have a good day.